Greetings, Rocketeer. Welcome to my adventures in Kerbal Space Program, the Heraklion series. Let's get right into it. So it's been a while since I've recorded any of these videos on the Heraklion series. Basically just because they're hard to do, really. So I thought I'd just do a follow-up episode to see what I have been up to since then. And okay, so when I last left this save, I had Tomcat IV, Duna Lander, in wide Kerbin orbit. There's Kerbin down there, and there is the Duna Lander. So I'm just going to go straight in there to show you what I mean. The Tomcat IV is my latest incarnation of the Tomcat. The first ever Tomcat had infernal robotics joints in it, so it could sweep its wings back and all of that. It was really cool, and it looked a lot like the F.14 Tomcat. But because of numerous issues with infernal robotics, with strength of joints and so on, I decided to just go for the fixed swept wing design. And then as I kind of kept going, I added more wings, I added more engines and so on, and right now it doesn't really resemble the F-14 Tomcat, except, I suppose, from the front. So if I, let's see, control from the cockpit, and I just rotate it around, I'll show you what I mean. Yeah, so as you can see, it only really slightly resembles the F-14 Tomcat, but, you know, the name stuck for me. And what I've done also is I've added a dorsal and a ventral module. So the dorsal module has the survey scanner, which allows us to scan moons and planets that we fly by. It's got a bunch of science things in it and some cooling radiators. I'll just swing it around. So as you can see, it's got a couple of nuclear engines, a bunch of rapiers, some extra docking ports, and underneath here we have the business end of the VTOL package. VTOL being vertical takeoff and landing, obviously. These engines are aerospikes, and the reason I chose those is because they're reasonably aerodynamic when flying sideways. So we're actually able to make it through the atmosphere, and they're reasonably efficient. I mean, there's more efficient ones, but just about all the other rockets just are not really conducive to being placed on the belly of an aircraft. And I paired those up with a whole bunch of these Werner engines, which are basically RCS thrusters that use rocket fuel. They're nice and powerful, and that's why I chose them. They only activate in VTOL mode, so that they help us stabilize. Because as we're spending the fuel, the center of mass shifts around, and then these engines are no longer in the middle of the center of mass, and we flip over. So these Werner engines help us stay stable. Now in the ventral module here, we have the mining package. So we have a refinery and a couple of drills, a scanning module, surface scanning module that gives us some nice ratings on what surface we're on. It's got a single module here for an extra seat. It carries a passenger in there. So it's all nice and handy and tightly packaged. So this craft will pretty much fly to any planet that has a moon, land on that moon, and refuel itself from the regolith it's able to drill from its surface. So it's nice and handy for exploring the Kerbal system. So, why am I telling you this? Well, this particular Tomcat has just finished refueling on Minmus and is now in a wider Kerbin orbit, and it's waiting for its transfer window to get to Duna. But what's come along while these guys have been up there is I have a new mission called Ferry 2 Tourists Safely to Their Destination, and they both happen to want to go to Duna. Now that's 2 tourists, and I only really have 1 seat free in this Tomcat, but I do have a couple of docking ports. So what I thought I might do is what I thought it might be fun to do is if I can get a couple of tourists into a passenger module, fly them up here, dock with the Tomcat, and use one of these 2 docking ports to sort of carry the extra module and the extra 2 tourists along for the ride. So the way I wanted to do this, I'm just going to zoom out, and let's see if I can get myself over to Kerbin. I do have just a craft that will be able to ferry the tourists over and carry those tourists across. Let's have a look. Sorry, carry the module across, and it just so happens to have taken off now and is currently just sitting in lower Kerbin orbit. If I switch to it, this is the Explorer, which has a handy couple of nuclear engines and some science and stuff like that. Let's see, just waiting for it. Here we go. So it is an unmanned drone intended for just general purpose flight. It's got a couple of surface scanning modules. And I originally wanted to deposit these in orbit of Duna and maybe a couple of the other planets. But it does have a couple of spare docking ports as well. As you can see, they're also the small docking ports. And it's got a ton of delta V. It's got just shy of 5,000 meters per second delta V. So what I think is, if I can get a passenger module up here, dock it to one of these, and then I can use this drone to fly the tourists in their little passenger module over across to Tomcat, and then the Tomcat can fly them across to Duna. So let's go back to the Space Center, and how are we going to get those passengers into a passenger module, and how are we going to fly them to the Explorer? Now for that, let me just have a drink. Now to achieve that, we need a decent craft to get them into orbit. Now I have got just the craft, I think. I'm just going to find that out. If I can carry them in the belly of a small single stage to orbit craft, I think it might be fun to see just what the implications and results of that are. So I'm just going to go there. So we have the Parakeet IV, the third incarnation of the Parakeet, and as you can see, it's a tiny little sort of fighter jet. It's got a lot of engines for a craft its size, which makes it reasonably easy to get up into orbit. And let's just open up its cargo bay, and it's got a little drone inside. So what I think is, if I remove this drone and I replace it with, let's see, first we're going to need a docking port. Okay, drop that in there, and then I want to put in a passenger module. Now if I can just find it, let's have a look, No, yes, no. Okay, it may be a structural thing, it may not be a structural thing. I thought it was a structural thing. We have some passenger module, but yeah, these are huge, so don't want those. Where is it? Where is it? I must be not seeing it. Okay, it mustn't be in here. Let's have a look at maybe aerodynamics. Okay, no, that's just silly. Utility, command control, no. Utility, here we go. Yes, that's the one I want. I want the crew cabin. So if I place that in here, very nice. So that's plenty of room still to go. So what I want to do next is I want to give it a docking port. So at the moment it's got a large docking port, but I want a small docking port there as well. So if I go to coupling, I pick a small docking port, and if I place it, I think if I place it at the very top, I'm not sure if the cargo bay door is going to close. Yeah, as you can see, it's still sticking out. So I'll just have to put it on the side, like that. And in fact, I think I'll just put two in there. Two docking ports, like that. So what'll happen is, the Parakeet will fly it up, and it will deposit this thing into orbit, and we'll be then able to dock it to the Explorer. Now, let me just see how much this weighs. This weighs 1 ton. So that's not very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of autonomy to this module. I'm going to throw in a little bit of fuel. So just a tiny bit of RCS fuel. Okay, and then I suppose a small battery. Perfect. And then I'm going to give them something that will fly them across. So let's see. So the Octo 2 will do. Okay, so now this is an autonomous drone, but it doesn't have any thrusters. So let's throw some thrusters on there. So this thing. Okay, a couple of those. And then back here. Okay, perfect. So now this is a drone that will carry passengers. It won't carry them very far, but it's nice and handy. So this thing weighs 370 kilograms, this thing weighs 10 kilograms, and this thing weighs 40 kilograms. So this whole thing is maybe a ton and a half. And just for the sake of things, I'm just going to throw in some slight tweaks to its aerodynamics. I'm just going to throw this away, put this aside, I should say. Here we go. Excellent. There we go. Okay, and last but not least, it's going to need a means of communicating, and it's probably not going to need to go very far to communicate, so I'm just going to give it the simple antenna there. Okay, now do we have room? Do we have room to throw MechJib on there? We probably do, but I really don't think it's necessary. Yeah, no, I don't really think I need to throw MechJib on there. One more thing I want to do, let's just see if I have the room for it, to put another docking port at the very top, just in case. Oh no, that's ugly. No, that is ugly, okay. Maybe if I swap these around. Come on. Yeah, it's all well and great, but it's not really necessary to do. I liked it with the Octo at the very front. I'm gonna throw that back on there. There we go. Okay, ooh, and we need some power. So we don't really need a lot, so I'm just gonna throw a couple of solar panels on there. Don't even really need that many, just need a single solar panel. Let's see, somewhere, where will I put it? Okay. Yeah, that will do. That will do. Okay, let's see if the cargo bay doors close. Perfect. Okay. We'll throw that away and we'll just save this as our passenger carrier. Save that. Okay. Now, let's get our passengers into the module. So we have an engineer and a scientist here. I think we've got plenty of those, so we don't need any one of these. I'll just put the tourist into the crew cabin. And we don't need anybody in the cockpit because we have our own drone core that will fly it up. Okay. So we'll close those cargo bay doors. We'll save. Okay, well, let's see if this works. So we'll just save that and launch. Having a drink of my tea, having some English breakfast with cream. Just gonna adjust my seat. Let's see if we can fly this thing. Okay, we haven't tipped over, which is a good thing. Let me just have a quick look. So we'll engage the brakes. Okay, I'm a bit nervous here. I don't think we're going to need Smart ASS for this, but just in case, I'm just going to prime it. I'm going to set it to 45 degrees pitch, just in case if we need it. Engage SAS, and just a bit nervous. Let's have a look. What else do I need to do? Have a look inside. Hello. Yes, they're a bit nervous too. Yeah, hello. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be nervous too, believe me, I am nervous. So have a look out the window and you can just see the cargo bay. It's not really much to see. Okay, and what else? Let's test the maneuvering surfaces. Okay, so that's yaw working just fine. Pitch is working well. Okay, and we'll fire it up in 3, 2, 1. Okay, we have good thrust. Taking off, disengaging the brakes. And we're underway, approaching 100 meters per second. Okay, and rotate. Gently rotate. There we go. Retracting the gear. We have good liftoff, good thrust. Okay, we're at 65% Mach. 70% Mach. 80%. We are at the speed of sound, approaching 2 kilometers altitude. Pitching right up to 55 degrees. 1.4 Mach. 1.7 Mach. Twice the speed of Mach. Okay, starting to level off. Gently now, getting a little bit squirrely. Starting to see some flames. 3 times the speed of sound. Thrust to weight ratio of 5.1, dropping to 4.7. Okay, we're starting to starve the engines. The air-breathing engines are starting to run out of air. So we're just going to level off just to get as much thrust as we possibly can. The engines are dying out now. 1.7 thrust to weight. Dropping the atmospheric efficiency. Okay, they're just about to kick over into liquid oxygen mode. 0.3, 0.2, 4.7 Mach, 0.15 thrust to weight. Here we go, here we go. Okay, it's a real kick once they engage, switch over to liquid oxygen mode. Really got to push down on the stick. Come on, here we go. Apoapsis of 100 kilometers, 113, and engine cutout. Okay, so just set it to prograde, and now we just cruise. Okay, we're headed for space today. We're at 112 kilometers apoapsis, and our periapsis is 307 in the minus. That's not too bad. I would have liked to have stayed in the atmosphere a little bit longer just to get a bit more of a run-up, but I will definitely go for that. Now let's have a look at trying to rendezvous with our explorer. So our explorer is ahead of us. I'm going to try to set a maneuvering node and just try to see if we can catch it from where we are. It's not likely, but no harm in trying. So let's have a look. Yeah, it looks like no matter what I do, it's still going to be too far away. Okay, I'm just going to try to circularize and just see how much delta V that's going to cost us. Okay, so once we circularize, we're going to be about here. That's too far. Here we go. Okay, that will do. That will do. So we are at 2 minutes to maneuvering node. And there's our engine still cooling down. Oh, what's that? That is an orange tank probe. It's 50 kilometers away. Oh well. I'm not sure we're going to catch it. It would be nice because it's got a nice lot of fuel in it. But anyway, I'm going to shut down these Rapier engines. Just a couple of them, just so we can get that squirreliness out of the way, because we don't really need that much thrust when we're out in space. Hopefully now, when we engage the engines, we'll just go forward. Having a look at the passengers. Hello! Still not really much to see, because they're still inside the cargo bay. And they're still a bit nervous. Let's have a look if we open the cargo bay. look inside, and you still can't see very much, but oh wow, yeah, you can see a little bit of space. Still not enough to impress them, but if you just look through, you can see a little bit of space through the window. Okay, we're looking at 1 minute 10 seconds to maneuvering node. I'm just going to accelerate time a little bit. 10 seconds. Now just as we approach this maneuvering node, just engage thrusters. There we go. It's much more stable with 4 engines instead of 6. Okay, trying to raise that periapsis to about the same. So just watch that. Okay, 79. Camera's decided to go potty. It's because we just reached orbit. We're effectively in orbit. Just want to properly circularize that. So raise that periapsis just a little bit more. 110, 111, 112. Yep. That will do. We are in space. We have 165 meters per second spare delta V, which is not a lot. I would have liked to have had a little bit more. Like I said, it would have been good to get a decent run up through the atmosphere. We do have an excess of jet fuel and not enough rocket fuel, but that's fine. The Explorer has plenty of delta V itself, so rather than trying to catch the Explorer, we're going to have the Explorer come to us. And here we have the Explorer, and as you can see, it's got nearly 5,000 delta V of fuel left. So if we have a look, there is our Parakeet, and yeah, at the moment we're really far off. So we're going to be here, and it's going to be over there. So yeah, we're going to have to do a bit of a trick of physics. I'm just going to watch this. Rather than going backwards, because the probe is behind us, if I did go backwards, I would just fall into the planet. So in order to go backwards, we actually need to go forwards. I'm going to take myself into a higher orbit, which will then slow us down, and it will allow the Parakeet, which is behind us, to catch up. So it's a neat little trick of physics and orbital dynamics. We're just going to go right around the planet and let Parakeet catch up to us. We're going to go forwards in order to go backwards. Just going to fine tune this. I need to watch that particular level. Okay, that's 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer is pretty good. And that maneuver node is in 2 minutes 45 seconds. That's looking pretty good. Okay, just accelerating time a little bit. Counting down, we have a minute 20, 1 minute to go. 45 seconds. Just going to turn towards the maneuvering node direction, which is also our prograde direction. Just making sure that the engines are in the right configuration. Yes, they are indeed engaged and ready to fire whenever we're ready. Okay, 28 seconds to go. Seconds to go. 15. As we get closer to the maneuver node, I don't want to throttle all the way to the max all at once. I'm just going to slowly open the throttle. Okay. Okay, we have good thrust. We're not spinning around. We're aimed relatively forward. And this is where MechJeb's rendezvous info panel really shines. It shows us the closest distance, very much what you already see in the map, the closest distance, but it's visible from anywhere rather than having to dig it out of the map. Okay, 100 meters per second yet still to burn. We're looking good. Closest distance is about 600 kilometers at the moment. Just keep raising that apoapsis. Okay, 40 meters per second to go and 8 seconds of burn left. Okay, just dropping that down to 0 and stop. Okay, just a little bit more throttle. I want to drop that closest approach distance to under 1 kilometer. We're looking at 3.8. It's a little bit more. There we go. 700, 500, 500's good. And there we have it. That is a neat little trick of physics, in that in order to go forward, in order to go backward, you must go forward instead. Here we go. As we're rising off the planet, we're starting to lose velocity. And watch as the Parakeet that is behind us is now starting to catch up. Here he comes. And still coming, and just as we start to descend, we end up lining up. And that is how you do lower Kerbin orbit maneuvers in a nutshell. Rendezvous maneuvers in a nutshell. Okay, so 2 minutes 17 seconds to intercept, and we will be doing a relative velocity of 232 meters per second, which is around 700-800 kilometers an hour, or about 400 miles an hour. So obviously we don't want to smash into it. This is why I always set the closest approach distance to something like 500 meters. If you have that any closer, you risk just smashing into your target rather than intercepting it. I mean, obviously you're intercepting it, but you really want the target to stay in one piece once you have intercepted it. So as we're approaching this, we're looking at 1 minute 40 seconds approach, and just turning towards retrograde at the moment. That is, we turn the engines towards the direction of travel, and that means that once we fire them up, we will effectively be using them as brakes. Because of course in space there is no air, there is nothing to slow you down, there is only external forces that you can apply to yourself. Okay, opening up the throttle, and just starting to slow down now. Our closest approach distance is slightly rising, but that doesn't really matter that much. 37 seconds to intercept. Just dropping that relative velocity, 40 seconds to intercept. Okay, 140 meters per second. Just keeping that burn going. 30 seconds to intercept, 100 meters per second. Otherwise 366 kilometers an hour. Okay, just having a look up close. Good burn. Very stable. 3 kilometers to target. Okay, another 8 seconds of burn to go, but our time to intercept has risen because we've slowed down enough. We've slowed down to 27.6 meters per second, or roughly 100 kilometers an hour. Still lethal at this speed, but we do actually want to get there. Okay, just accelerating time now. Here we go, and final approach. 900 meters distance, 7 seconds. Our closest approach distance will be 588 meters. This is excellent. And somehow I always seem to do this. Whenever I do any of these sort of high-risk rendezvous, I always end up on the dark side of the planet. So I always end up doing all of my tricky docking or tricky rendezvous and maneuvers in the dark. I don't really know what that's about. But yeah, I always seem to rather enjoy making it hard for myself. Okay, great. Now, as you can see, our orbits are pretty well equal at this point, and that's because we're traveling at roughly the same velocity as the Parakeet, and we're very close in terms of inclination of our orbit. So now all velocities being relative, we just simply point towards the target and we go in that direction. Okay, don't want to speed up too much, but we do want to get there eventually sometime this year. Okay, 56 seconds to intercept, and we're gonna just get there to within about 30 meters. So that is a good intercept distance at this speed for me. So just turn to retrograde again and get ready to use our brakes. Okay, from this distance we should be able to start seeing some details of the target, but because we're in the dark, it's all more or less invisible. Okay, approaching now. 15 seconds to intercept. There we go. It's just starting to see a little bit of detail, starting to see a little bit of its lights. And opening up that throttle just slightly. There it is. Starting to see those blinking lights. And there we have it. Throttle dead, and we have rendezvoused successfully with our Parakeet. Our passenger carrier Parakeet. Okay, this is where MechJib's Smart ASS really comes in handy, because you can just get orientations really easily from it. What am I doing? Okay, try to be parallel to the target. That's what PAR plus means, and PAR minus means opposite. So point in the opposite direction of the target. So I'm just going to switch to reverse velocity or retrograde. It's the same as the retrograde in our SAS, but it also has the ability to specify roll. It's more or less much of a muchness. Okay, just opening up that throttle just to bleed off that last bit of velocity. And according to our rendezvous info, we're looking at 0, 0, 0. Excellent, excellent. Just using that SAS, the RCS thrusters just to null out the last of the velocity. Okay, now, how are we going to do this? So the docking ports are on the side of the module, so we can't just pull it out of the cargo bay. I'm just going to turn on the lights, and there's not much light to go around. Okay, so we are going to have to do this in pitch darkness. Okay, plenty of RCS fuel in the tank. It hasn't been drained off in some mysterious fashion, which has been known to happen. I just tend to use up the payload's RCS before I use the delivery craft's RCS. Just making sure of that. And control from the large docking port, and up. Okay, the RCS is very sensitive because there's not a lot of mass. Oh, hello. Where's this? Oh, right. The headlights from the landing gear of the Parakeet have lit up the whole scene, so it does look like we're not going to have to do this in pitch darkness, which is a good thing. Okay. Well, we have overshot that particular docking port. It's just going to be too much hassle. So let's try to point at the other side. So that one. Okay. And turn on this other handy feature, which is the docking alignment indicator. It's really handy, this thing. As you can see, I'm just now aligning the docking port so that it's in the same orientation as the target port. And our rotation at the moment is 180 degrees to it, so I want to rotate that around to be facing forwards rather than backwards. Well, it's really sensitive with the RCS. I rarely drive craft that are this light relative to how much thrust they have. Okay, and just need to move outside of its immediate range and then move across to the side just to line up with our docking port, and then we'll go forwards and it should be sweet. And I do not have any thrusters facing the forward direction for us at the moment. I can go up and down and left and right, but I cannot go forward with relative to the docking port we're driving from. So, okay, so I've just turned it on its side, and it is really tricky to try to move sideways like this. Whoops, oh, I've just hit the map key by mistake, and it's getting a bit tense. Oh boy, I may end up losing that. Oh, good. We just missed that solar panel. The parallax error made me think I was just going to hit that solar panel, and we were going to be solar panels, shards flying all over the place. Okay, that was a close one. Yeah, trying to fly this thing sideways is, yeah, it's not really tenable. You know what? I'm just going to leave that thing alone, and I'm going to fly to it using the much more maneuverable Explorer craft. Okay, it's starting to spin a little bit because, of course, it doesn't have any reaction wheels to speak of at all. Okay, next time I must remember to bring reaction wheels, any kind. Okay, just use the RCS to stand still. And it's drifting, but at least it's not rotating. That's fine. And okay, point towards the target using our SAS to do that for us. And I might want to retract these solar panels. I do not want to lose these. And just use the RCS. Just try to move forward. Okay, we're moving at a decent speed, about 0.3 meters per second, or about 1 kilometer an hour. Okay. And just try to orient our docking port so that it is rotated correctly. It's a little bit trickier because this is a bit heavier craft. You know what? I'm going to use Smart ASS for this. So if I set it to parallel minus, it will be, and a force roll to 0, it will be in the opposite direction, or facing the target docking port. And it will rotate it so that we are facing forward or upwards in the same direction that the docking port is. In other words, once it's docked, that craft, that module will be facing forward, as you can see in our alignment indicator. Okay, so we want to try to use our Smart ASS just to align us that way, while we just use the RCS to just adjust our velocity so that we can just line up with that docking port, and watch that pink indicator in our nav ball. That is our target direction, and then move our flight direction so that it lines up with that. And now we just slowly drift towards it at about 0.2 meters per second, about 0.7 kilometers an hour. Okay, 5 meters away, nice and steady, steady. All right, we're docked. Excellent. Excellent. Well, this was a tricky, and there is a sunrise just in time. Just as we finish this tricky docking shenanigans in the dark, the sun rises. Okay, we bring out the antennae, and I don't really want to bring out all of the solar panels just in case. We don't really need all of the solar panels. Just a couple. Yeah, just in case we end up snapping them off through some mishap. Okay, closing up the Smart ASS, turning off the indicator. We are looking, just make sure that the ASS is off, of course. Don't need the rendezvous info. Okay, this Explorer is now ready to deliver our passengers to the Tomcat. Now, let's have a look. How do we get to the Tomcat? It's a fair distance out, and we probably do have the delta V to get there, but I want to kind of try to be as frugal as possible. Try to use some of these moons. To boost us, because if you have a look at the inclination, relative inclination to our target, it's fairly high. It's about 5 degrees. So I'm just going to set a maneuver node just to see how much it'll cost to just match planes with a target, and it's 200 meters per second, which is huge just to line up in terms of plane of orbit. So we may be able to use one of the small moons to as a gravity assist to just help us change in the right direction. So if I try to use Minmus, let me just open up this node, and okay, that's not quite the right place for us to be. I just want to get close enough to Minmus so that its gravity will pull us and change our direction of travel. That's what people don't quite always get right with what they call gravity assist. You're not actually adding any energy to your system when you do a gravity assist. You're more using the gravity well to change your direction of travel. So you'll be going in one direction, say outwards from Kerbin, and when you leave the gravity well of the moon, you'll be changing direction and going more towards the orbital direction around Kerbin. So it will actually give you a much wider orbit rather than just a very steep orbit. Okay, so getting to Minmus is a bit tricky, so I'm going to see if the moon or the Mun will give us a better boost. Now, before I do any of this, I just want to see how the Tomcat is going. I just want to make sure that all of our docking ports and there's room around those docking ports. I just want to make sure that I don't want to be out here and then to discover that something's just not going to fit. So just having a quick look, I think the solar panels might be in the way. Not 100% sure, just having a look. It may be a snug fit. I probably shouldn't have put the nose of the module on there. But we did need some RCS, although I suppose we didn't end up really using the RCS. It was a bit of a waste, but it does look like there will be room if I retract one of those solar panels. Just to be safe, I am going to retract them before I dock, and then I might deploy them just to see if they'll fit. Okay. So with my mind at ease, going back to a Parakeet now. Okay. So, back to planning this, I suppose. We do need to get out there, but still not 100% sure how to get there. So at this point I'm thinking I will try to use the Mun as a gravity assist. So let's just have a look at what we can achieve from it. So just add a maneuver node and pull it out all the way to the Mun itself until it catches us. Okay, that's a little bit late. Let's try, sorry, early. Let's try to pull that across. Okay, it's a bit better. Okay, that's looking good. That's looking good. That gives us quite a decent boost. As you can see, it really gives us that sort of change of direction as we end up behind the moon, and it pulls us sideways in the direction of prograde in terms of the Kerbin orbit. So it gives us a decent boost, gravity assist, if you will. So if we do that, will we then be able to catch Minmus? Will we be lucky enough to catch Minmus on its way out? Maybe. We'll find out. But for now, I'm just going to fast forward to our current maneuver node. We'll get to the Mun, and we'll take it from there. While we wait, I may as well give us some space facts. Here we go. If I go to the Brief History of Rockets by the NASA website, today's rockets are a remarkable collection of human ingenuity that have their roots in the science and technology of the past. I like that quote. That's interesting. Okay, so we're now approaching our maneuver node. We're about 55 minutes out, and our alarm has gone off. This Kerbal alarm clock is really useful for things like this, let me tell you. Especially because you can have, say, multiple craft all on the way to a particular moon and or a particular planet, and you can plan their maneuver nodes all at the same time. Okay, and we're just opening up the throttle, and we still have a stable, good burn. The extra weight on the side is not really pulling to the side too much, because it's not really that heavy. There's quite a bit of mass in the center, so the center of mass hasn't moved along too far. And this burn is going to take 3.3 minutes, which is quite a while. So we can't really fast forward. We can't really do time compression in Kerbal Space Program. But yeah, so I think I might just fill in the space by giving us some more rocket facts. So according to the NASA website, one of the first devices to successfully employ the principles essential to rocket flight was a wooden bird. The writing of Aulus Gellius, a Roman, tell a story of a Greek named Archytas who lived in the city of Tarentum. I am probably butchering these terms, I do apologize. Now a part of southern Italy. Somewhere around the year 400 BC, Archytas mystified and amused the citizens of Tarentum by flying a pigeon made of wood. Escaping steam propelled the bird suspended on wires. The pigeon used the action-reaction principle, which was not stated as a scientific law until the 17th century. About 300 years after the pigeon, another Greek, Hero of Alexandria, invented a similar rocket-like device called an aeolipile. It too used steam as a propulsive gas. Hero mounted a sphere on top of a water kettle. A fire below the kettle turned the water into steam, and the gas traveled through pipes to the sphere. Two L-shaped tubes on opposite sides of the sphere allowed the gas to escape, and in doing so gave a thrust to the sphere that caused it to rotate. Basically, it was a ball with a couple of pipes sticking out of it, and it was spinning because steam was pumped into it and came out its two little pipes. Just when the first true rockets appeared is unclear. Stories of early rocket-like devices appear sporadically throughout the historical records of various cultures. Perhaps the first true rockets were accidents. In the 1st century AD, the Chinese reportedly had a simple form of gunpowder made of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal dust. To create explosions during religious festivals, they filled bamboo tubes with a mixture and tossed them into fires. Perhaps some of those tubes failed to explode and instead skittered out of the fires, propelled by the gases and sparks produced by the burning gunpowder. The Chinese began experimenting with the gunpowder-filled tubes at some point. They attached bamboo tubes to arrows and launched them with bows. Soon they discovered that these gunpowder tubes could launch themselves just by the power produced from the escaping gas. The true rocket was born. The date reporting the first use of true rockets was in 1232. At this time, the Chinese and the Mongols were at war with each other. During the Battle of Kai Keng, the Chinese repelled the Mongol invaders by a barrage of arrows of flying fire. I do apologize, I'm probably butchering all of these terms. These fire arrows were a simple form of solid propellant rocket. A solid propellant rocket. A tube, capped at one end, contained gunpowder. The other end was left open and the tube was attached to a long stick. When the powder was ignited, the rapid burning of the powder produced fire, smoke, and gas that escaped out the open end and produced a thrust. Okay, we are a few seconds out from the end of our burn. Another 50 milliseconds to go. Just having a look now. Okay, another 8 seconds of burn left, and at this point I don't really trust the maneuver node anymore because we're that far out, so I'm just going to eyeball it here and cut. Okay, yeah, so if I had gone further with the maneuver node I would have ended up even closer to the moon, but this will do. This will do. And that's given us a nice wider orbit as well, so that's a good thing. Okay. This is good. This is good. As you can see, we were going in a sort of almost outwards from Kerbin, and as we slingshot around the moon, we will be going much more sort of outwards and sideways as well, so it gives us a sort of wider arc. And now let's see if we can catch Minmus from our apex. Just having a look at those markers of our closest approach, and it does not indeed look like that we will be catching Minmus, but maybe, just maybe, we can catch the Tomcat. So just having a look, it looks like our encounter will be on exact opposite ends, but if we just move our maneuver node ever so slightly, or rather quite a way around our orbit, let's see if we can find a way to catch it. Okay, just dragging this maneuver node all along our orbit just to see if it will catch it. So at this point it will come close on the return trip from here. Just trying to sort of minimize the amount of burn we have to do to do an intercept. Okay, so this will be a separation of 2,000 kilometers in 14 days. See if I can fine-tune this. Okay, so the further along I drag this, the closer we'll get. Let's just see. Okay, there seems to be a sweet spot just around the backside of Kerbin. Yeah, definitely. So if I put it around here and then adjust it, it's a bit fiddly. I really just want to try to get the most optimal burn position without the mun getting in our way. Okay. So it looks like right around here would be best, and this will be 1,600 kilometers separation in 14 days and 22 hours. See if I can fine-tune this just a little bit now. No, that goes in the wrong direction. Whoa! Okay, let's pull that back. Okay, 1,600 kilometers, 1,609, 1,622, 1,608. 1,600 kilometers is quite a separation, but on this particular scale, sort of this far out from Kerbin, it's not really that bad, so it will do, and we can fine-tune our approach at a later time. So I'm just going to add a maneuver node, sorry, an alarm for when we do the maneuver, and then we're going to fast forward first to the moon, and then to our maneuver node. Just switching to in-game mode just so we can see the moon as it sort of flies by. I always think it's really cool. Like, I've done this dozens of times, but still hasn't lost its appeal. It is really cool. And now as we swing around, we're going at a fair decent clip, but of course we're accelerating time as well. Oh man, yeah, that just looks amazing to me. Okay, and we are just leaving the influence of the Mun again, re-entering the Kerbin influence, and now we should be good to just fast forward to our maneuvering node. Now the distances at this end are enormous. It takes several days just to get around. And thankfully we're not gonna get close enough to the Mun. And okay, we have 10 minutes to go. 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5, 4. Okay, approaching our maneuver node. 3 minutes to go. Our alarm goes off. We'll turn that off and delete. Just get ready for our approach to our maneuver node. It's not going to take a whole lot of burn. In fact, at full throttle it's going to take just 3 seconds to give us the 12.6 meters per second delta V to make this course correction. Okay, just fast forwarding some more. Okay, and just turn on the engine gently. And watch our closest approach distance. So 1.7, 1.6. Okay, that's too far. And I'm just going to switch to prograde and activate RCS and see if I can fine-tune this some more. Okay, 1.6. Okay, still 1,600 kilometers separation up there. I want to see if I can get that to be any less. Don't need that maneuver node anymore. Okay, let me highlight that and see what we can do about this approach distance, because 1,600 kilometers is useless. I mean, it's really far away. Relatively speaking, it's not that far, but maybe if I add a second maneuver node closer to, whoops, okay. Hey, that's just catching us on our return trip to the moon. Let's see, maybe if we attack, here we go. Okay, that's looking much better. So 500 kilometers separation, which is way better than 1,600, and try to give it some more of that. I believe that is the normal direction. Okay, 100 kilometers, 6.9 kilometers, that's looking, whoops, wrong way. 10 kilometers again. Okay, that is looking much better. So a separation of 5.3 kilometers at that distance is definitely better than what we had before. And it's not really that expensive. It's just another 11.5 meters per second. So we will set up a fresh alarm and fast forward to it. So that only took about a day or so to get there. And we are at this point approaching our apoapsis, and we're doing about 92 meters per second relative to Kerbin, which is not terribly fast at all. As you know, we needed about 2,200 meters per second just to be in lower Kerbin orbit. Okay, that is the alarm, and just turn that off. Okay, and turn us towards the maneuver node. Get us ready for our 3-second burn. That is 2 meters and 40 seconds. That will bring us from an approach of 1,600 kilometers to just 5.3 kilometers separation at our closest approach distance. So 3, 2, 1, and open up that throttle. Ever so gently. Okay, watching that closest approach distance drop. Okay, 240 kilometers, 150 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 9 kilometers, almost there. Just a little bit more. Okay, we overshot. It had it at 3 and then it's 5. So I'm just going to use the RCS just to fine tune. Okay, wrong direction. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Too far. Okay, I'm going to try a different direction. 2.6, 2.2. That's looking good. Let me actually go to in-game mode so you can see what I'm doing. At this point, you just have to take my word for it. But at least this way, you might be able to see something. So, just using the RCS to fine-tune down to 287 meters. I think that will definitely do. Take it back out to 300. We don't want to be too close. Okay. So our current distance is 43.68 thousand kilometers from the Tomcat, but at our closest point in 3 days and 3 hours, we will be 302.5 meters apart. That is what I call fine-tuned rendezvous. Okay, so at this point we're doing 102.5 meters per second relative to Kerbin, which is not terribly fast, and at our apoapsis, which is 13 hours away, we'll be going even slower than that. It's very much like throwing a rock into the air and watching it go up and then slow down and then begin to fall again and then go really, really fast just before it hits the ground. Except, were we to miss the Tomcat and make no other course corrections, we would actually fall back towards Kerbin and miss Kerbin and come all the way back out here again, because there's just no air to slow us down out here. We would be stuck out here in perpetuity. But anyway, thankfully we still have good drone radio signals, so we still have control over our passenger carrier ship, as it's renamed itself. It's a good bit of fun when you attach a node to an existing ship. It tends to rename itself if you don't already have a crew compartment in there. So our Explorer has turned into a Parakeet 3 passenger carrier ship. Okay, on approach, we're looking at 9 hours and 14 minutes to go. So I'm going to see if I can add an alarm that will let us know. So let's have a look. So maneuver node, target distance, yep. And closest approach distance, yeah, I guess all of these things. Yes, add the alarm, please. Okay, so that is 9 hours 13, and our closest approach is 9 hours 14. That will do. So now we can just accelerate time and not live in fear of overshooting a rendezvous. I mean, the Kerbal alarm clock is just amazing. It is so useful. As of course is MechJib and the docking alignment port, all of those things. It just wouldn't be without them, you know. Okay, now that we're about 2 minutes out, I don't need that alarm anymore. Again, we turn to retrograde with respect to the target, and we get ready for our deceleration burn. Okay, a nice solar flare there from, I believe it's Scatera, the mod that gives us very nice looking solar flares. And okay, 46 seconds it will take to burn to stop, and we're about 2 minutes 24 seconds away from the target. So we still have a little while to go, just do a little bit more time acceleration. Just a bit more, going down to 70 seconds, 60 seconds, 48 seconds, and open up the throttle just a bit. Okay, and we are slowing down. So it will take us another 37 seconds to slow down, and we're 47 seconds away, so we want to reduce throttle. We don't want to stop before we reach it. Okay, 30 seconds of burn, 105 meters per second, which is around 366 kilometers an hour, or about 220 miles an hour. Please do feel free to correct me there. I'm just doing these rough estimates in my head. A mile being roughly 1.61 kilometers, and a meter per second, or sorry, meters per second being about 3.6 kilometers an hour. Okay, we're approaching at 89 meters per second, just a little bit more deceleration, with 25 seconds to go before we intercept. At 2 kilometers away, it's still just a tiny dot. We can't actually see details, but I am starting to see slight glints of metal just as it reflects the sun off of our Tomcat. Still a bit far to see any detail. Okay, and 15 seconds to go, slowing down to about 60 meters per second, or about 200 kilometers an hour, roughly 140 miles an hour. Okay, at 40 meters per second, 13 seconds to go, 500 meters away, 7 seconds of burn, 6. Okay, we're approaching at 25 seconds away, but we're just at 400 meters away, 3 meters per second, 10 kilometers an hour, and stop. Okay. We've ended up going in the opposite direction, but that is fine. We're now 400 meters away from the Tomcat, and as you can see, our orbits are just about the same. Periapsis and apoapsis are slightly different, but we're very close together. Again, now, once again, now that we're this close and our speeds are just about matched, all velocities are relative, so we just turn towards the target and burn towards the target to get to the target. It's a very good thing that I put that docking port on the far side of it, because that thing will not dock itself, as we've seen before, and the Tomcat might have trouble catching it. So I think I will have the Explorer in its entire one piece dock itself via this other port on that passenger module, and then detach itself from its own docking port. So it will effectively bring the passenger module right up to Tomcat, dock to it, and then detach. I think that will be ideal. Okay, now that we're on our way, we're about a minute away at this speed, which is about 20 kilometers an hour, about 12 miles. Okay, I'm just turning towards retrograde, just getting ready for that deceleration burn again. Not going to need a great deal of fuel now, and we're still, I mean, the Explorer has a ton of delta V remaining. 3,191 meters per second delta V, which is insane. I mean, these Nerve rockets, they don't have a lot of thrust, but they're incredibly efficient. They're really, really good for flying out in space. They will not get you to orbit because they simply don't have enough thrust, but once in space, they're just amazing. Okay, I'm just doing a bit of deceleration. We're down to 1 meters per second, 1.1 meters per second. I think I will just let us get by to get out of Tomcat's shadow. And there it is. It just looks gorgeous to me. I think it's just really well put together. In particular, I've picked up a great deal of tips from the Kerbal Space Program Facebook group in terms of wing pitch, which I never thought was even possible. I never even thought to explore that, but since I've adjusted the wing pitches, I've been able to get right up into orbit with a whole lot more fuel left in the tanks, which is just amazing. Okay, now let's prepare our docking port. I think I will retract this panel and use the right-hand docking port. Okay, and get the Explorer ready. So I want to retract all of our solar panels. I really don't want to lose a solar panel out this far. And control from the docking port, so that will allow us to sort of rotate ourselves using that docking port as a reference, and set the target. And use the Smart ASS to rotate us in the correct alignment. And we're going to need the docking port alignment indicator, which is just amazing. It is so useful for docking. I mean, you can live without it, but it just makes things so much more cool and so much more easy, so to speak. I mean, I used to tear my hair out because I just used to have to eyeball it. And if you want to do any kind of precision, alignment, rotation, docking, and so on, it's that much more difficult. And of course, we use our trusty nav ball, so we try to use our flight path indicator and our target indicator and try to get those to align once we are actually aligned with the docking port. And so just nice and steady as she goes. As you can see, the flight path indicator is just past the target indicator because we want to actually travel to it before we actually burn in the opposite direction to try to stop our sideways movement. Okay. So we are now about 11 meters out from the docking port, and it is just coming into view. Just using the RCS, it's a little bit squirrely. Just using the RCS to fine-tune our approach. We do not want a collision this far out. We've come too far. I really want to just dock this thing and have it work. I do not want to ruin these people's day. They have been through enough and they've traveled long enough. Okay, so just coming up to the target at 0.2 meters per second. That is just 0.6 kilometers an hour. So it would take us about an hour and a half to traverse a kilometer at this rate. But that, of course, is just relative to to the Tomcat. We are traveling at about 100 meters per second around Kerbin still, and we're traveling at a really good clip around Kerbal, which is the sun of this particular system. Anyway, that's enough talk about that. Let's just final approach now. Very gently, just little bits of adjustment with the RCS. And the target indicator on our nav ball is just in the middle, which means it's right in front of us. And so we set the flight path to be right over the top of it. Steady as she goes, 3.5 meters out. Nice and gentle, just keeping that orientation. There we go. Easy does it. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. 1.6 meters out. Coming in. 1 meter out. Here we go. Come on. And docked. You beauty. Hey. Alrighty. Whew. We have made it. We have successfully delivered passengers from Kerbin surface by taking off from the runway using the Parakeet to deliver passengers in a passenger module to rendezvous with our Explorer, our long-distance deep space explorer, which has then carried the passengers in a piggyback sort of style and then taken them all the way out to the outer orbit of Kerbin, where Tomcat, itself a single stage to orbit spaceplane, was waiting patiently for them. This has been a lot of fun, and now it's very much just all about waiting for that ideal transfer window, and if I could just get the camera to behave itself, just waiting for that transfer window and then engaging once again our rockets and taking the Tomcat all the way to Duna. Having a look from the inside, just having a look from the different passengers. There are our passengers, and they are absolutely thrilled. They are absolutely overjoyed, as I imagine they would be. Okay, that window is not working because it's just the Tomcat itself, but past this particular docking port, we can really see they are pleased, and they can see space, and they are absolutely pleased with being this far out in space. Okay, that is that. Thank you so much for watching. This has been a lot of fun to make and a lot of fun to play. And if you're interested, if there's not enough interest, I will be making another video which will take Tomcat out to Duna and see how it flies and where we can go from there. Just extending this solar panel just to see if there's room. And yes, there is. There is just enough room for the solar panel as well, so it all worked out beautifully. Excellent.